Thank you, Connie. My name is Susanne Haffeli-Hestvig. I also work for Try Corona, and I have a question about two elements which I don't see in the paper. That one is the influence and the role of the banking and the fiscal and monetary system, which today is guided towards consumption. Could you please elaborate more on how you work with other commissioners and other institutions on including that in the future? And the second element is the development of demography. I understand that everyone tries to get their birth rates up, but in a way that also means more consumption, and no one really seems to want to think about the pension reform or other reforms of our social systems that are based on a declining demographic basis. So those are the two questions. And a comment to the emission reductions outside Europe. I would have found it so much better if the caps could have been reduced drastically and the prices would have gone up, and then the restrictions which you have already now on industrial gases could be increased to other, I understand, countries and sectoral types which maybe are not on the top of your list of being financed. Because these two technologies which we heard about, we are very much working with these technologies on a daily basis. And today we see these projects happening in many countries. In 18 months we will only see them in least development countries, but there are so many others who are really at the bottom of the development scale, like Kenya, for example. They are not least development countries, so money there will just unfortunately dry up, and all these good initiatives, if they are not implemented within the next 18 months, let's say, unfortunately then we have to pull out our investments. Thank you.
Then Susanna was referring in both questions actually to sort of consumption. And you are right, no matter how we turn and toss it. In 2050, it seems that we will be 9 billion people on planet Earth instead of 7 billion now. There is no way I can see where we won't have growth and increased consumption. I mean, it would be immoral if we said to the poor part of the world, please, you have to sort of be a bit, you cannot have exactly the same as we just took for granted. So there will be a very big increase in growth. But I believe that in order to make that a different kind of growth, a more green growth, not the same kind of growth that we created when we in the 18th, 19th, 20th century created Europe, for instance, there we need to rethink our growth model. I'm on a UN panel that is supposed to come up with some suggestions on this before the next 10 months. And one of the things is, when we measure growth, we just measure sort of traditional GDP growth. If, for instance, there is an earthquake, I know it sounds cynical, but then afterwards there will be a lot of activity. Or in Australia, after the floodings, there will be a lot of activity. It's actually, in some respect, that is good for the GDP, because activity will increase. How can we sort of factor in the impact on nature, the depletion of resources? If you do something good for the environment, how could we price that? How could we make it attractive to do something for the common good? If we need to have energy access to the 9 billion we were talking about before, how can we make it attractive? It's not difficult to get private companies to invest in India or China or whatever, but how would we make them invest in Mali and in the Maldives, for instance? So that is sort of how to internalize externalities, how to price the common goods. I know it sounds sort of like a very big agenda, but I guess that is one of the main issues that the world will be discussing next year, because we have Rio +20 conference in May 2012, and there I think this will be one of the key issues, because we cannot create the growth we need for the 9 billion if we just continue with the same kind of growth. We need a much more energy and resource efficient growth, and we won't get it unless the pricing mechanisms for doing the right things is changed also globally.